My name is Helen Victoris, and I'm the president of the Elementary Teachers of Toronto. And on behalf, I hope that this is okay. On behalf of the Elementary Teachers of Toronto and our 10,000 members, I'm so proud and honored to be helping bring this event to all of you this evening, called Black Resistance and Public Education. One of our featured events during this month of Black History Month events at ETT. I know we're all looking forward to an incredible evening featuring some of our own Black ETT educators who, as you will hear, offer such leadership every day in the struggle against anti-Black racism in public education, as well as in community, and also create such opportunities in our schools, for our students, for our educators, and for our community every day. I'm also so thrilled that we are hosting this event tonight at Blackhurst Bookstore, a site itself of Black resistance for decades, struggle, celebration, and community building, and with our moderator, Ida Sadhu, who is herself an incredible icon of Black resistance and education for decades in Toronto. I want to thank you as well to our amazing ETT Vice President, Nigel Barif, and Julius, executive officers who have organized this event tonight, and to our panelists, all ETT members, educators in the Toronto District School Board, Mark Baker, Dr. Stephanie Ferron, Leroy Newbold, and Tamaj Garad. I know this will be a very exciting evening of learning and inspiration for all of us. Thank you.
Yay. Thank you.
Yay! So we start all of our Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario. We start all of our events with the reading of our human rights statement and our FMNI, which I'll do that right now. So the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario is committed to providing an environment for members that are free from harassment and discrimination at all provincial and local federations sponsored activities, fostering the goodwill and trust necessary to protect the rights of all individuals within the organization, neither tolerating nor condoning behavior that undermines the dignity or self-esteem of individuals or the integrity of relationships, and promoting mutual respect and understanding and the cooperation as a basis of the interaction among all members. Harassment and discrimination on the basis of a prohibited ground are violations of the Human Rights Code are illegal. The Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario will not tolerate any form of harassment or discrimination as defined by the Ontario Human Rights Code at provincial or local sponsored activities. Also, in the spirit of truth and reconciliation, the Elementary Teachers Federation of Ontario acknowledges that we are gathered here today on the customary traditional lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Haudenosaunee, the Anishinaabe, and the Huron-Wendat. So, at this point, I get to introduce our hostess with the mostest for our event tonight. And Ita Sadhu, who is a woman of many talents and has been a community developer, entrepreneur, and educator in Toronto for decades. Her youth entrepreneurship program designs have been adapted as models for job placement opportunities, skill development, and leaders in training program. One such program was the Fresh Arts and Fresh Elements and Fresh Arts initiative designed for youth to develop technical and production skills in the cultural industries. Featured on African Canadian History 2011 poster, Ita Sadhu has contributed to the legacy of African Canadians with the naming of the Toronto sites in honor of their contributions. She is a best-selling Canadian children's author whose books are translated into foreign languages, adopted by schools for curriculum, and adapted to film. A contributor to the development of Canadian publishing sector, Ita is also a founding member of the My People Literacy Awards and founding member of the Black Book Affair. She is co-owner of A Different Book List, this wonderful space that we're in today, and one of the few independent bookstores left in Toronto with a focus on finding literacy gems that reflect Toronto, the African Canadian and Caribbean diversity. Her love for storytelling has taken her to schools around the world, and she has developed stories that have a special appeal for children. Thank you so much, Aita, for hosting us today.
Thank you, Nigel. And I must say, as you were reading my bio, I was thinking to myself, I hope it doesn't eat up the whole hour. Started to get a little nervous there. Like, shoot, reading me off the planet. But I want to say good evening, everyone, and good evening, everyone within the sound of our voices. And we are live streaming. And again, you may be in the comfort of your home or in your car. And by extension, you are also inviting us into your hearts. So we want to thank you for joining us on this podcast. And I'm here with some incredibly dynamic persons, but I also want to say elementary teachers of Toronto. We want to say enough respect and thank you too for this incredible opportunity. And I am sitting with three, and then a fourth person is going to come on the scene, remarkable persons, and we are going to dive in to Black resistance in public education. And when I say that, I'm trying to visualize what it looks like, but because you are looking at the guests right now, I am going to go ahead and introduce them. And the order in which I'm introducing them is by no means the order in which they're going to be answering the questions. But if they feel that pressure, or if my eyeball lands on them, or my breathing accelerates as I look in their direction, they clearly know they're it. So here we go. So I'm going to go, first of all, with Dr. Stephanie Ferrin. And Dr. Stephanie Ferrin has a PhD in educational leadership and policy from the University of Toronto. Her research draws on Black storytelling traditions to explore the ways that Black mothers and educational institutions partner to support student well-being. Dr. Ferrin's work uses literary and visual arts to communicate in a instructive, creative, and accessible form. Insights gleaned from stories shared by Black mothers and their children. Read Dr. Ferrin's recent research on the educational leadership of Black Canadian mothers in the Canadian Journal for the Study of Adult Education and Frontiers in Educational Psychology. And stay updated about her work by visiting her website, www.animarights.com. But Dr. Stephanie Ferrin is no stranger to us, and we have seen her throughout the community in all kinds of forums and in meetings. And so today we extend a very warm welcome to you in this evening of Black resistance in public education. And now I'm going to go to another person that I know and I've known for a long time. And both Stephanie and Leroy, I have seen your progress over the years as students, as educators. So big welcome to you. Leroy Newbold is an educator, community organizer, and parent caregiver. And she's also an author. Leroy recently completed his master's at York University in Black Liberatory Education. Currently, Leroy works for the Center of Excellence for Black Student Achievement in the TDSB, where in his former role, he designed Afrocentric Black-focused curriculum and taught at the Afrocentric Alternative School for 10 years. I can't believe 10 years went by so quickly. Leroy. Additionally, Leroy is a co-director of Freedom School Toronto, which is a youth and parent-driven initiative that intervenes to fight anti-Black racism in the school system and to create educational alternatives for Black children. So visit www.freedomschooltoronto.ca, and there you can explore and further experience the work of Leroy Newbold, a trailblazer here in the city of Toronto. And then a whole brand new person that I have met all of 30 minutes, and we family already, is Mark Baker. Mark Baker has been an elementary school teacher in Toronto for the past 26 years. Only 26 years. After receiving his degrees from York University, he started out on a mission to influence and empower children and change lives. He had fond memories of the teachers from his past who inspired him, so Mark wanted to do the same using sports, music, and humor. He is a husband to his wife, Jocelyn, and a father to his 8-year-old son, Leon. Mark starred in his own fan film called U2 Brother in order to break down the barriers of color of being black and a super fan of the band U2. Mark has managed to be on stage with the real U2 4 times. 4 times. Mark also plays bass in the successful U2 tribute band Acrobat. And he's also a tech house DJ who just blows up the party oftentimes on weekends. So I am very, very happy to also welcome Mark Baker here to the panel tonight.
Thank you so much.
And joining us a little later in the program is none other than Timaj Garad, and she is an Ethiopian, Harare, Toronto-based, multidisciplinary storyteller. That makes my heart sing because I'm a storyteller, so anybody who is a storyteller is family. She's also an arts educator and a community organizer using poetry, theater, and music to bring her stories to life. Her art is autobiographical, working at the intersections of a Black Muslim woman challenging injustice, unearthing truths, and healing. As an award-winning artist and educator, Timaj has graced over 400 stages and facilitated several arts-based workshops. Timaj is the founder of Luminous Fest, Canada's first Black Muslim arts festival, and co-founder of the Sisters Retreat, a retreat series hosting local and international art-based wellness retreats for Muslim women. She's currently living in Toronto, and we want you to also check out her new single and music video called Black Gold, as well as her debut EP, Blooming at the Mouth, in 2021. She is a powerhouse and a transformative power of the arts here in the city of Toronto, building capacity and strengthening communities. And you can follow her at timajgarad.com. So these are our incredible guests this evening as we explore Black resistance in public education. And so to get us started, I've got the little microphone thingy here, and I sort of like interrupting my flow of my hand and, the flow of my bangles that my grandmother gave me. So I hope I'm just going to prop you next to the water, and it's going to be all good. So my first question to folks is such an intimidating question that I want to ask it first. And that question is 2023, this is February, it's the month of Black History Month. What have you seen this month now that we are back in real time, or people coming together, that has been different about Black History Month? Or is it the same old, same old, same old, or are we maintaining status quos? What are your thoughts?
I can speak from my school. From my school seems to have done, we have new administration in my school, so seems to have done a lot more in talking about events and people over the announcements, having students discuss who's important to them in the community as well. And we have a lot more, at my school at least, a lot more visual representation up of who in the community that's Black is important to you, or who's a role model for you.
Are those things on the wall, do they look temporary or do they look permanent?
This is a board that moves depending on what's happening in the school, right? But we at our school, we definitely make sure that we have all races and different things always there, and the kids represented on the walls in permanent and in transient things. If that makes sense.
Okay.
Well, for me, I guess when we started doing Freedom School was about 7 years ago. And when we started off, we were asking youth, what do you learn about Blackness at school? And they would say either nothing, or they would say they learn about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, or American Black history. Or if it was about Canada, they would say the Underground Railroad. So I guess something that's different that I'm seeing now is a lot more emphasis on Black histories of resistance and Black joy globally, and stories that youth can see themselves in more so. Yeah, I think that's one big difference, and also a focus on Black joy. So in the Center of Excellence for Blacks in Achievement, we focus a lot on, you know, if the only things that you hear about at school about Blackness are about trauma and slavery, then that's really a disservice to learning about yourself and your community. So I'm hearing a lot more about Black joy, and Black joy as connected to freedom as well too.
So for me, what I've been seeing is really connected to what Leroy's been talking about. This real centering now around Black joy, Black healing, especially in connection to liberation. What I'm also seeing nowadays is this desire, this aim to really connect with families around this discussion, and really engaging families in ways around Black resistance, Black joy, Black healing, in a way where we want to know what's going on at home. We want to connect what's going on in the home to what's going on in the schools. And I'm noticing a lot more, not just within the Toronto District School Board, but with other institutions and organizations that are really making a point to do outreach and to, you know, connect with families, Black families around this. I really think that there are still opportunities to grow, and really opportunities to even trouble this idea of what is Black joy, and what is Black excellence, and what is Black resistance in critical ways. And I'm hoping that's the direction that we're going into, but already I've seen much improvement over the years that I've been a teacher.
Yeah. One of the fascinating things for me is that we are apologizing less and less. You know, my gosh, we're gonna have Black History Month, you know, for like the next 2 years, and then we'll be equitable, or, you know, it's just for a moment. So at least this year, I was pleased that we didn't feel that we had to apologize and defend the principle of celebration. But here's the thing for me, we can sit and we can have this wonderful conversation, but then we have to go out to the community and talk to people who don't often speak a particular language, and every sector has its own discourse and its language. So when I roll up on somebody or the next parent out there and I say to them, are you joining me in Black resistance and education and public education? And they look like, oh my gosh, like, what are you talking about? We were just talking like, you know, my child ain't doing good in school and I have to go talk hard to teacher. I know you come in with this thing of Black resistance and blah, blah. So my question, how do we communicate that to parents? What is this thing called Black resistance and Black resistance? What does it look like? Because people now are in the world where they want to have something that is practical. We're in a takeout society. So give it to me so that I can work on that.
I guess I could start. Black resistance, what it looks like is Black children and youth are three things. They're the brightest shining thing. And I like to start with that a lot because it's true and because people don't talk about it enough. Oftentimes in Canada, in anti-Black racism-based society, Black children and youth are positioned as a problem, and they are the brightest shining thing. They are the most beautiful thing. So I think at the heart of Black resistance is that belief, and also the belief that Black youth are the reason and the answer. So meaning in Black liberatory pedagogy, Black children are the reason for everything that we do. So they're at the center of how we imagine spaces when we create them. So for example, we might teach about capoeira because it's a way to teach about resistance and fighting back that's based in dance and music and joy. Or we might teach about voguing because whereas out there in the world, Black transgender women are talked about as they should expect a life of 35 years. That's a life expectancy for Black transgender women. In Vogue, that's not how Black transgender women are talked about. They're talked about as the absolute pinnacle of beauty. So we might teach about that. So Black resistance means that we center Black children, not just Black children, but Black children with other intersecting experiences too, and that's why I'm talking about Black transgender people, Black queer people. We center them as the reason, and then also as the answer, because as all these things are happening in our system, and people are responding to the violence that's happening within our education system, within public schooling, Black children and youth are also articulating the answers to these issues. I'm not saying that they should have to have the answers, but they do. Yeah, I think Black resistance is those three things. Black children are the brightest shining star. Black children are the reason and the answer.
So, Leroy, that was just such a beautiful response. Like, I have to give it to you for that one. And I'm just thinking here, like, how am I going to add to Leroy, what Leroy just said? But yeah, I'm an arts-informed researcher. So I look at research, I look at even pedagogy through a lens of the arts. Even like we were talking about storytelling, like even the art of storytelling. So when I think about Black resistance, I really think about just our stories. What are, our Black children, what are their stories? What are the stories of their mothers, their families? And how are we making sure that these, structures and experiences that we're building upon really center their stories? And I'm looking at ways that we as Black people have long shared our stories, whether it's through picture books like you write, or whether it's through voguing, or whether it's through, visual arts, or, spoken word poetry. Like, these are just different ways that we are actually embodying resistance. And recently I've been just pushing back against this idea that we always have to be excellent, that we always have to be joyful. I'm really trying to sit in this space where Black resistance is just me being me, and all my imperfections and all my perfections and all my dreams and all my low points. That is just part of being, part of this Black resistance movement. This idea of I could just be me and just dream about these worlds that I want to create. And one way I'm going to express these dreams of resistance is just through my art.
For some strange reason, when I hear the words Black resistance, I keep thinking of other cultures being very resistant to us. That's what in my mind I keep feeling, or for some reason my mind goes there. And I feel as an educator, part of when I'm at school is teaching children who I am as a Black man, who my family is, what my story is, and how my story probably is a lot different, but not to be resistant or be afraid of my story. I am a person who bleeds, loves, does I do many things, or we do many things that other people do. And I feel like sometimes other cultures do not see us as human or do not see us as equal. And I feel that the stories, the art, the different things that we do for children at school creates more acceptance. I'm not even going to say tolerance, more acceptance of who we are as a people.
And that's where you land.
Pardon me?
And that's where you land.
That's where I land.
That's where you land. Yeah. Well, it is great that we can discuss these things, but it's always also too important that if we're communicating them to community and to parents and to caregivers, that they too have an understanding of what these terms that we use and how to articulate them.
Yes.
And I particularly like the centering to that Leroy started out with, that the student is in the center of the activity. I particularly like the fact that, we are oftentimes under pressure, that we've got to be, happy, and we've got to be joyful, and we've got to be all of these other things that we're supposed to be, or the expectations are so high on that we never really get to be ourselves. So you're almost in a kind of way, almost in performing mode.
Yes,
With
yes.
folks, right?
Yes.
But I think though that somewhere in our DNA there's a sign on our back that says, we are going to resist you anyway. We don't take us for granted. We are going to push back, and you're going to resist you. And the whole time that you were speaking, for some reason, my mind went to Muhammad Ali and in his resistance in the world to government, to
Right.
community, with self. So for some reason, I got caught up with that. I want to go now to something that is topical, and it's in the news. Sometimes when I go to high schools and their buildings, and they're very old, and a lot of high schools in the city, their buildings are very ancient. Sometimes I look at those buildings and I think that they're penitentiaries in the making, and this is like the first thing that you see of a jail, of a prison. But that's just me talking, right? But I want to address, though, the violence that is happening among students, whether there be black young people or otherwise. But I want to address that, and I want to get your thoughts. We've heard all kinds of things about systemic, institutionally, systemic racism. We've heard about the poverty. We've heard about incomes. We've heard about high density areas. We've heard about all kinds of reasons why violence among young people and violence among young people right now in the classroom or schools are happening repeatedly. So I wanted to get your take on what you think is the reason why we are seeing this violence occurring, but not only what you think why you're seeing it, but what are your thoughts of how it can be best addressed? And then I'm going to put that way, how it can be best addressed. And this is not a new conversation for any of us. We don't subscribe to any notion of black on black violence, so let's shut that down immediately, right? That's not even on the table here. But I wanted to just get your thoughts and your thinking as leadership in the Toronto District School Board. How would you address that on a given day? I'm gonna go to you.
Goodness me. Big question. Big question. Big question. I know that, the board has talked about, less suspensions for black children. The board has talked about, making sure that black children have opportunities and things like that. I'm not sure the violence in the community. We have some violent incidents at our school. They have involved some black children. I believe there are different circumstances as to why this has happened, and we've talked about whether it be home life, or whether it be monetary means or whatever. I'm not sure I have the answer to elaborate. I'm not sure.
What do
I
you
wish-
tell your 8-year-old on a good day? So you're watching television, you're watching the news, and you see this thing come on, and your 8-year-old is with you, and it's like, "Hey, Dad, what's that?"
Right, and
what
we
do
do
you say?
spend a lot of time talking about the news, and we talk about how other people perceive black people, and we talk about what has, we talk about history-wise and racism and the history of racism and things like that, and we discuss how you might meet somebody who does not treat you properly because of the color of your skin, and what are you going to do about that? So we do have these discussions all the time. Same as my parents would have the same discussion with me. Mark, you have to prove yourself. You have to do better in school. You have to make sure your marks are good. Like, I feel sometimes that all of a sudden I become my mother, and I'm saying the exact same things to my biracial son. And you know, it's the conversation I don't want to have, but it's a conversation that I feel like I have to have to prepare him.
You think the pandemic has contributed to this, or socialization, and now we're social again, and
A little bit of both. Little bit of both. There are, you can see the gaps in the way children are unable to interact like they used to because there has been a gap in that socialization. So that is definitely a factor. Definitely. Now the pandemic's over and people are mingling. Kids are relearning how to interact with each other, and sometimes a lot of those interactions are not good.
okay. I'm gonna go to you, Stephanie. You're on the hot seat.
So what this is making me think about is years ago, when I was a classroom teacher, I actually taught a class that was an all boys, Black identified class. And the focus of this class was reading for grade 4 and 5 students. So I had a group of Black boys who were still learning how to be confident readers. And I remember when I was teaching them around reading and around how to be confident, you know, with your reading and your writing, we got to the point where the students were starting to write. And I remember this because I took a picture of it. And one of my students, he had this big Bristol board, and they had to write down their goals. So what was your goal? Like, what's part of your dreams that you would want to see happen in the school? And he wrote down, I want to be seen and I want to be heard. And that stuck with me. So it's kind of going into what Leroy said earlier. For me, I question how much of these solutions that we are talking about and coming up with actually center the voices of Black children and Black youth. And it really struck me when he actually wrote it down. And this was one of the first things that he, you know, felt confident and sure about writing down on this Bristol board. I want to be seen and I want to be heard. So when I look at all these solutions that are being put forward by anywhere, by society at large, by government bodies, I always go back to what my students wrote down to me. I want to be seen and I want to be heard. How much of these policies, these experiences actually center student voice as well as just students themselves? Again, in all of their perfect, beautiful ways, and ways that even when they're sad and happy, joyful, crying, like how much do we really center students in our imagining of this better world and imagining of these solutions? So in that vein, it's hard for me to make a solution and to say it out to everybody. I wish I had it, but what I do know is that whatever step that I do take in addressing everything that's going on in the world, in Toronto, in the schools, has to center Black voice, Black children's voices, especially.
I'm just curious, what was your follow-up when you spoke in your conversation with that student, or I'm assuming this, you had a conversation with a student. What was that conversation like?
Well, it was actually a really good class. So I had only 6 students in my class, and all the students wrote down their goals, their dreams. And then what we did was we did a game plan of how to achieve that in the school space. So all of our lessons, all the work that we did in the school and in the community centered their goals. So for this particular child and all the children in the class who were Black children, it was about how do we ensure that our voices, that your voice is actually seen and heard in all aspects of school life. And that involved many things. We did fun leadership things in the school, in the libraries, out in the community. We went on adventures everywhere. It was amazing. But again, it was a really good experience because my students that I serve forced me to actually center their voice, their ideas, their dreams, their art in everything that I did in the classroom.
Leroy, your thoughts?
Well, I think part of what impacts me in thinking about this is that I do work within the school system and also outside of it. So I was a classroom teacher for 10 years in the Afrocentric school, and I also do work in the community. And in the community, I've had the pleasure of working with students who were really discarded by the system. One boy who was expelled due to, reasons like what we're talking about now about gun violence. And in the community, under the careful care of his aunties, of his community members, he went on to be an Ontario Scholar. So I've seen what happens with youth within the system and also within the community, and how drastically different it can be. And it kind of makes me think of how youth rise to our expectations. If our expectations pull them up and give them wings, or if our expectations lock them down or put them in cages. And you were talking before about how sometimes the school itself can look like a carceral space, right? So when I'm thinking about these situations of violence, that's something that I think about. I also think about my partner's schooling experience. And when she was 10, she got sent to go to school in Jamaica. And when she went there, it totally transformed her school experience. So she would tell me about how, like, the kids would ask the teacher, "Oh, miss, can you stay back? And we want to ask you different questions about what we were learning. I didn't quite understand." And just being engaged and being excited about learning, and everybody there and present being a learner and knowing that they are that. So I think about that when I think about, obviously poverty was present, but even when there's poverty, even when there's these conditions, homelessness, like you were mentioning, those aren't the true barriers. The true barriers are shame, are classism, are low expectations that educators in the space can have. And our students prove that by how they can, with those different challenges, they can meet that bar, they can surpass it, they can think of bars like that we haven't thought about, that aren't based in respectability, like you were mentioning earlier. And then I also think about, like what you said, Stephanie, about Black youth having the answers in terms of addressing violence and how they've articulated that. And I put one in my phone. It was Black students at York Memorial, when there was a lot of conditions of harm happening there, and they wrote out their list of demands. They wrote out, number 1, conduct an inquest into systems abuse at York Memo. Number 2, allocate more resources to our school. Number 3, prevent police presence. Number 4, implement a public school student union. Number 5, listen to students and act on their needs. So again, it just goes back to what you were saying, listening to youth. They are articulating the solutions to these problems because they are the ones in the space. They're the ones experiencing them, right?
For some reason, everywhere I go, it seemed to suggest that 2023 should be a year of listening. It just keeps popping up all the time in different conversations. People are suggesting that maybe we talk less and we listen more. But when we listen to, we just can't listen with the ears. We got to listen to with the heart, because then it makes it exceptionally meaningful. And when you spoke about York Memorial, one of the things that struck me too about that school in the neighborhood, that it is an area that has been under construction for a very long time. A lot of tearing up, a lot of displacement. And if I can't see anything growing, and if I just can't see concrete being turned over all the time. Sister Soldier in her book, No Disrespect, says that she goes to visit a friend, And when she gets to her friend's home, she realizes that, oh my God, they've got trees, like green things growing in your neighborhood. And she couldn't recall anything growing in her neighborhood. And so the question for her was, well, how do people grow if you don't see growth around you? So every time I think of York Memorial, I think of the construction and all that development taking place. So it's almost like your lives every day, you're looking, there's this incredible upheaval taking place. And where do you fit in all of that?
This is where the students this year this is where the students walked out, correct? Am I making sure I have the right, yeah. The students walked out and they protested, and then they had a press conference right there, and all the students came up. It's the right incident, right? Yeah.
That is resistance.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, yeah.
And they spoke very well. Some of those people, some of those children spoke very well.
Yeah.
Young adults spoke very well.
Well, again, also too, it brings us to the question or the issue that oftentimes too, when we are talking about leadership, when we're talking about youth issues, when we're talking about things impacting students, are they at the table? Are they at the table of stakeholders? Or somebody says, make sure we get 3 youth to come to this meeting to represent, make sure that we do whatever. So it is really important that when they are at the table, that they're seen not as the youth member of the table, but they're seen as another collaborator within the process at the table. Yeah. You want to say something, Stephanie?
And just you speaking, Aita, youth, black children, black people, we communicate and we express our resistance in many ways. So yes, that is one example of the way that, a recent example that black youth continue to tell us what a possible solution can be, what a possible world can look like, especially in education. But we see it as classroom teachers all the time, in our classrooms, in our schools, in our communities, of just different ways that black children, black youth, black families are constantly telling us, hey, this is not working. You're not listening to me. You're not seeing me. And it is up to us to hear it, to receive it, and also to act upon it. Because we already have all the responses from black youth. Now it's up to us to continue to collaborate, hopefully, or allow black youth and children to lead us, rather, into making the changes that need to happen. And I think that's a step that we haven't yet taken yet.
Do you think we're losing face with young people? Because if for such a long time that, they've advocated and they've said these things and we've written them down and there are 1 million reports in all the universities and whatever, are we losing face with them? And as an educator standing in a classroom and you looking at students, I mean, you're perhaps, pretty cool educators that your students, you have a good relationship, but are we losing face as educators with the students in our classroom? Are they thinking, well, yeah, I hear you already, but what's going to become of this tomorrow? Same old. So are we losing face with them as black people? Yeah, ask that question.
I would like to think no, we're not. But I can see if I was a teenager at this time, maybe I might feel in disarray, disillusioned. I would like to think no, based on all the serious violence that's happened south of the border and the things that have happened with police officers and things like that, and Black Lives Matters. I would like to think that things are turning for the better, and that educators or people who black children trust are there to help them along the way or guide them along the way. So I'd like to think that things are better, that they're not losing faith.
Okay, I'm gonna have to have a lot of reassurance on that because the Proud Boys, I think they came out of Canada.
Yes, correct.
So that is problematic for
correct.
me. And also too, as we talk about critical race theory and critical thinking, and I think about people who have no understanding of what it is, or even want to attempt to understand it,
Right.
and maybe white, and
Right.
maybe poor,
Right.
and maybe unemployed. and, you know, maybe a little upset that, you know, people of darker hue or melanin have more advantages, then this could be a problem in Canada, or the type of government that we could probably vote in on a good day, you know, could really take us back light years. So I'm just wrestling with those things. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Wrestling with those things. Yeah. Wrestling with things. All right. Well, I've got one. I got another question, and then I got to bring to Majin, and I can see our producer. In case that you are wondering what you're watching, Black Resistance in Public Education, brought to you by the Elementary Teachers of Toronto. So I just want to say, and they're located right now in this minute at the Blackers Cultural Center, 777 Bloor Street. But now the question I'm going to ask, this is the last question, the big earth-shattering question. When we go places, again, people gives us tons of advice. Here's a list of all the things to do. Here are all the 25,000 recommendations in the report. But right now, with all the power invested in me, I have made you the leadership of the province of Ontario, right? Don't even think about what the government looks like. Think you are the government right now. I have made you also directors of, you know, the amalgamation of all the school boards put together, right? So you've got superpowers. If you were to change two things, because people, this is a takeout society, people like takeaways, people like actionable items. If you were to change two things, what would those two things be in public education? And what would you replace them with?
Someone else can answer first. This is the most so heavy. So heavy. Dominoes.
I'll go with you, Steph. Yeah, you got superpowers. And I know the superpowers might be weighing you down. Yeah, because that's what happens sometimes when people get superpowers. They get weighed down.
I know the pressure of it all.
Yeah.
I guess I've been told to start. I'm not too sure, to be honest with you, Aita, what it would be right at this moment. I do know, just from the themes that we've all been speaking about for the past little while right here at our little table, is that we really want to, you know, create a system where Black children are centered. We also spoke about the idea of making sure that leadership positions also include Black children's voice, Black family voices as well. And then, I don't know, for me also, this is just me, I told from the beginning, I said I was an arts-informed researcher. I really would love to see public education really look at the possibilities of the arts back in schools. I think the arts provides us with this unique opportunity to be critical, to, you know, investigate the world that we live in, to really explore who we are, and to really imagine new ways of being. And I think through the arts provides that opportunity. I think of all the things, especially during the pandemic, as we continue to go through many different forms of the pandemic, as we look at how our lives are right now, how it has always been. I'm looking at all these pictures in this space, and everything that I see really centers how Black communities have this long-standing tradition of using the arts as a form of resistance, as a form of understanding who we are, reimagining who we are, looking at the possibilities, and just creating better systems and societies for our loved ones. And that is something that I really would love to see in public education. And it also it allows us to deepen relationships with others. And that's what I would love to see in public education as well. My little bit.
Okay. When I go to the polling booth, I'm going to put your name, even if it isn't there, and tick it off.
Okay, you're right. Well, I've talked about this with my students, with my kids a lot about if you had superpowers for Black liberation. I remember one kid told me that he would want to have the power to move metal, like Magneto. And,
Lessons that you did at
yeah, we
Centric.
would talk about that, and he would want to pull all of the doors off of all of the prison cells with this Magneto power. So if I had superpowers, it would be, or could make two transformative decisions. It would be self-determination. So put in the babies in charge, the Black babies, the Black queer babies, the low-income Black babies, in charge of the whole thing. And I guess the power of healing as well too, because a lot has happened within the system. A lot has happened, and I think that there are people in community who have those healing powers, and they happen through the arts too. And whenever I witness them, I'm really in awe and grateful. So the power of healing as well.
Sweet. Thank you. I will put your name too and pick it up, even if it's not on my ballot. Yes.
So I
Mark.
also was thinking about music, so art
you're
and
teaching.
because at schools, it seems like the music teacher or the arts seem to not be there anymore with the teachers, and we seem to import acts to come in and do a little show, and then they're gone, and the kids aren't really doing anything to express themselves. Black children have no way to express themselves, and so the art and music is a big thing. As a person who played piano and play music is huge. Visual art, those sorts of things need to be instilled back. And my other thing is nourishment. If I could make it so that food is on the table for families at home, Black, everyone. Lots of kids are coming to school hungry, and I feel that for many in the Black community, it's a disservice that, food isn't there, and that affects learning, affects temperament, affects everything. If I could do something about food, nourishment of the body, that would be the next thing I would do.
Okay, there you go. Sure, got a lot of voting in that polling station.
Can I clarify my
Sure.
response for your ballot? I also want everybody, well, you all at the table, to understand that I even see things like mathematics as an art form. I see, I see the sciences. Like my best friend's an astrophysicist. Like she's an artist.
Yes.
I see the curriculum, like through the arts. So when I don't want people to think that I'm just saying that we're all this song and dance.
Yeah.
Right.
I want to really stress this idea that when I think about,
Design.
the design, the art, like science,
Yes.
mathematics, historians, to
Yes.
me, they are all artists.
Yes. Well, this brings us to a wonderful note. And I think an artist should be at all tables, and every table, whatever you're talking policy, you're talking development, whatever the sector is. I believe that an artist should be at that table because, boy, it would be a whole better world and a whole greater and bigger point of view. So having said that, we are going to invite, a poet, a storyteller, a multidisciplinary artist to the table. I introduced her before, and it's Tamaj Garad, and she is going to come and join us. My guests, they didn't just disappear. They flew to the other side of the studio as Tamaj flew in to join me here. Good evening, and how are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I am very good, and I hear that you are bringing us words and wisdom and food for thought. and really truly resonating that the artist should be at all tables.
Yes, well, I hope that's what I'm about to do, and I just want to thank you for this conversation. It's a beautiful conversation. I myself am not an educator in the TDSB teacher sense of the word, but I'm an arts educator, so I really value this discussion and the conversation around resistance and Black resistance. So I wanted to share a piece, actually really good segue from what Leroy mentioned about superpowers. This piece is called Capes. They say not all heroes wear capes, but what you wear can have you looking for heroes like stars in the day as you guard what you say to move the target away. Capes can drown you or cover the scars that they make. Even scarves can be capes. Capes like cloaked in a future, cloning future, so there's enough for us all. That's our superpower. Fly for hours, black to the future, over skyscrapers and cumulus clouds, overlooking dubious towns that overlook this brown skin. Same streets we would drown in. Then play hopscotch with rocks and tell a symphony of a call to prayer mixed with mama's call to stop called us in. Sounds drumming up memories of my youth, beating to the beauty of being us. Hands sticky with injera, hearts busy with dreams of just being. Before becoming became us. Before becoming became us, and the hustle would chase us as pieces of the puzzle to place us somewhere that didn't fit but would shape us. Before becoming would make us. Before becoming became us, as we tried to make our mark in a world that sought to erase us, even though there are no erasers for markers and even our own marks don't make us. Before becoming became us, as some of us sank and some of us came up, in a world where our world is invisible, simply because we wear capes invisible, but not when capes become hoodies, not when capes look like jogging or holding a phone or shopping, not when they fashion capes out of the threads of my unraveling and wear my story like theirs because theirs is too loud, with my mother's running to tell, written in too much red to not bloody their hands when held invisible, just not when survival has looked like having to wear a cape at all, becoming small to move within the walls of their institutions through the maze of glass ceilings to find a glass ladder, sometimes just to become tall enough to fall. Some days we're invisible because it's better than not being seen. It's because it's better than being seen in a way we don't see ourselves at all. Some days we do what we can in a world where we need to save ourselves from glass ceilings and ladders, trapdoors, and worse. And some days feel like I'm feeling all the seasons at once, breezing past the past as we leave the past where the sun left us, budding to become all the shine in us, love pouring out of every pore that you find in us, even while the winter seemed to freeze time to confine us, hold us trapped. Other days feels like summer is holding all her winters back. So we're holding on to the beauty of being here. We made it still. Hands sticky with injera, hearts busy with dreams, even surrounded by this maze, these plots, but we'll be okay because their plots are like injera, sticky with holes in it. That's the first piece.
Whoa. I hope whoever, wherever you are, that you're clapping. You're allowed to do that, you know. Let's not let the studio people do that. Yes. Oh, my stars. I don't know if I should do the snap it or scream in the middle of your poem.
It all works.
Yes.
Snaps, claps. Do we have time for one more?
No, I would love T-Madge to share another piece. I think that, we can't have like gift like this roll up in here and we're like silly like thanks, you know? So, no, I would very much for you to share another poem.
Okay,
another
thank
piece
you.
with us.
So this piece is called Black Gold. I actually turned it into a song, and it's on my latest EP, Blooming at the Mouth, on all streaming platforms, shameless plug. But before it was
Plug again. Rewind, again.
Blooming at the Mouth on Spotify, Apple Music, and all streaming platforms. And before it was a song, it was a poem, so I would like to share the poem with you. Black Muslim girls, Black Muslim girls, Black Muslim girls, you are more than magic. You are more than magic. You are a multitude of dope fly out of this world, love, making love to love, melanated masterpiece. There is nothing tragic about you. The tragedy is living in the kind of world that brings you the kind of grief that has you digging the earth with your teeth, duality wrapped in your tongue as you code switch deep enough to be black and Muslim, but rarely at the same time. Your spine is a site of intergenerational trauma. And they mine your back until it cracks and exposes the black gold from your backbone that was sought, but this is not a minery. We are the kind of tired you become when you're both the product and the labor, because apparently there's a bed here on our backs that some will sleep on yet call themselves woke, but this is not a dreamland. This is quicksand. We are women with a softness that will sink you and lift you at the same time. Prayer, bead-woven fingers when we are triggered, then proceed to whisper scripture and strive higher than the brand of justice that was promised here, in the dance between the ephemeral and eternal. Here in the in-between, here in the you can't hear yourself loud enough to hear your dreams sometimes. I know the system makes you nervous sometimes. I know the system makes you nervous sometimes, but your nervous system was designed to feed you feeling, impulse through your pulse for healing. Your winters withering in their bloom while holding on to your truths. Your blackness has always been in season. That's it. Thank you so much.
Her name is T. Majgarad, and you will see her on all streaming platforms. And check out her single and music video, Black Gold. So I'm going to invite the panelists to come back. Everybody,
Yes, we're bringing
yes, the
some coming up.
producers.
We'll do a Saturday Night Live thing. I just wanted to say thank you, everyone. Thank you for making this such a powerful evening, and sharing all of your wisdom and your hopes and dreams for our Black community and our Black children, and keeping them centered. We are so grateful for you spending this time with us here tonight. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
you.
you.
Yes,
Thank you, everyone.
Black resistance. Woo!